Okay, so for 10-3 part 2, we're focused more on solving for missing side and missing angle. Both of these sets of notes are optional, and they're very similar when it comes to parts, except for the solve and calculator work are the main differences here. So keep that in mind when you're doing this. Like I said, they're optional notes, not required, but very, very, very useful, okay? So I'm going to focus on missing side first. I'm going to set missing angle aside. And I'm going to talk about some example problems, okay? So first of all, I have example problems where I have a missing side. Solve for x and solve for w. And like always, I write at the top of my paper, SOHCAHTOA. Remember, sine equals opposite over hypotenuse, cosine equals adjacent over hypotenuse, and tangent equals opposite over adjacent, okay? So I'm going to follow these steps step by step to just make sure it's very clear what we're doing, okay? That's where I don't cover it. So first, identify the trig. Circle the angle given. Circle the angle given, just like was recommended for us in part 1. Look at what sides you were given, trying to find the relation to the angle. So let's see. I'm given the hypotenuse. I know that's the hypotenuse because it's across from the right angle. And then I'm trying to find, what is this one? The opposite, right? We're not really working with adjacent. So I'm looking at which one has a hypotenuse, and I want to find the opposite. Well, with opposite, I'm between these two, and with hypotenuse, I'm between these two. So since sine has opposite and hypotenuse, I want to use sine. So I picked sine, cosine, or tangent. So I picked sine. So that's the first step. So then we write it down. Second step is to set up trig, parentheses, angle. So sine is the trig I chose. Parentheses, my angle is 26. Equals side over side. And for sine, it's opposite over hypotenuse. So I do x is my opposite over hypotenuse, 8. Now for the solving part, okay? It says put the trig side over 1 and cross multiply. So here's how I do that. I put it over 1 and then I cross multiply. So I end up sine 26 times 8 and x times 1. Let me write that out. So 8 times the sine of 26 equals x. Okay, now let me show you how I actually type that into the calculator. The calculator worked down here. I'm going to show it on both a school calculator and a phone calculator, okay? Because it's the same thing either way, but I just want to show you guys. So angle trig, so my angle is 26, and then I immediately press the trig, so that's like they go together, okay? So my trig is sine, so I press this little sine button right here, times the side, times 8. 8 equals. It says I have to press equals, so I have to press equals. So I know that x equals 3.5. I'm going to round to the nearest tenth there. That is what x equals. So that's how I solved that problem, okay? And that one was for when it's side times trig angle, which is what I have right here, side times trig angle. But there's a different circumstance as well, and I'm going to show you guys that on the second example, okay? I'm going to follow the 3 steps again, just so that way we understand. First, circle the angle given. Look at what sides you're given in relationship to the angle. So it looks like I'm given the adjacent side, and I'm trying to find the hypotenuse. So looking at SOHCAHTOA, adjacent is cosine and tangent, hypotenuse is sine and cosine, so it looks like I'm going to be using cosine, adjacent and hypotenuse. So I'm going to write that down, cosine, and it says to write it up, trig, parentheses, angle, 38 is my angle, in parentheses, equals adjacent is 23, over hypotenuse is W, okay? And now I do the solve step. I put trig over 1, and I cross multiply. Now, when I cross multiply, I end up with W times cosine of 38 equals 23. Okay? That's where I'm currently at. Now, the important part here is I want to get W by itself. Now, there's only one thing attached to W right now, and that's cosine of 38. No, I cannot just divide by 38. I have to divide by the entire cosine of 38 if I want to get W by itself, because that's what I'm solving for here, right? Cosine of 30. And whatever I do to one side, I have to do to both. So that goes to 1, and I'm just left with W over here equals whatever 23 over the cosine of 38 is. Now, our calculator work for this one is a little bit different, okay? Let me show you guys on the school calculator, and then at the end, I'll show you on the phone calculator. So the first one is side 23 divided by the angle. The angle is 38. Don't press equals here. Trig. See how the trig is immediately? So I have to press cosine. And then you must press equals after this. Right now, what's on my screen right now, that is just telling me what the cosine of 38 is. By pressing equals, I'm doing 23 divided by the cosine of 38, which is 29. Now, you can always double check that your answer actually makes sense. I'm actually going to round it to the nearest hundredth this time. Always follow whatever the directions tell you to do. I didn't put any directions on here, so I can do whatever I want. Always check that your answer makes sense. If I'm solving for the hypotenuse, it must be bigger than another leg, which makes sense here. On my previous number of that 0.1 whatever number, that wouldn't have made sense for a hypotenuse. Same thing here. If I'm solving for a side, I know it must be less than the hypotenuse, which 3.5 is. Okay? Let me show you both of these on the phone calculator right now. I'm following the same steps in both these situations, okay? Now recall, it's not just because of sine that it ends up like this and because of cosine that it ends up with the dividing. It depends on the problem. If 8 and x were to switch, my problem would look a lot more like this. It really just depends on the problem, okay? So let's do this. All clear? Angle, 26. The trig is over here, sine, times 8. I once again get my 3.5 number. Now I do the same thing here. I do side 23 divided by angle 38, don't press equals, trig, cosine, then I have to press equals. 29.19, same exact answer. So you guys can do this on your phone calculator very easily, or I know a lot of you guys use the computer calculator as well. So that is how we solve for missing side, okay? Solving for missing side.